Good morning, everybody. A bright, sunny morning in KZN. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Rizana Hussain, the chairperson of Litasa KZN. As you all know, the Literacy Association of South Africa is a volunteer-run professional body with the primary purpose of promoting literacy. We operate at national level, and we have 4 branches working locally. We provide resources and learning opportunities to increase your knowledge and skills. Your involvement will help us grow into a strong, vibrant, and productive community. I encourage you to become a part of this by becoming a member, and all membership forms are on our website. We've just come out from a successful conference, a virtual conference, and I'm sure we had positive feedback from everything else. So now, to continue with what KZN has to offer to you, this is a second part of our webinar, the first one being suka, sukela, and we had psychologists, a librarian, an OT, and now the second part is only teachers' experience with easing anxiety through storytelling. I would like to welcome Kalei, Chaldine, Nana, and Rihanna on the platform, and my exco is going to introduce them individually. Please enjoy the webinar. Thank you.
Confucius once said, "We learn wisdom by 3 methods. First, by reflection, which is the noblest. Second, by imitation, which is the easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest." The Diary of Anne Frank is a powerful recollection of experiential events. The young lady journeys in isolation that touches the heart, the head, and the hand. This book demonstrates the therapeutic effects of written language as Anne copes with the anxieties. Today, I am proud to introduce Sheldon van der Merwe from Clarendon Primary, who uses literature stories to connect with her pupils. In addition, she will enlighten us on appropriate learner-based activities for a grade 6 child. Books are the plane, the train, and the road. They are the destination and journey. They are home, Quinlan. The concept home for Anne Frank was in a constant state of flux. So let us introspect on the reflection of Anne's diary. Over to you, Sheldon.
Thank you so much, Rogini. Really appreciate that introduction. Let me just share my screen. All right. Good morning, everyone. I have chosen to present today on the Diary of Anne Frank for a number of reasons. Over the years as a grade 6 teacher, it's often a period of history that my children are the most interested in. And ironically, before this whole pandemic hit, I managed to secure a book for each of my learners based on the Diary of Anne Frank. Given the age of my learners, which are about 11, 12 years old, I managed to find a copy that was written predominantly for younger readers. So it sort of skims over things that are more sort of appropriate for sort of 13-year-olds to read the book. And what I'm going to do today is just show you a variety of different activities that I use with children when I present this book. I feel it's very important for teachers to actually be reading to children. Just as teachers are able to sort of work with books that have a high vocabulary, and you can teach numerous things, and especially the Diary of Anne really opens up a whole lot of discussion opportunities. So I found it effective, especially over this pandemic period. For those of you who might be familiar with Frank, she was a young Jewish girl who landed up having to hide away in Amsterdam during the beginning of World War II. It's a story that has a happy ending, but it does open up a whole lot of discussion around some quite difficult and contentious subjects. First of all, the goal of Anne Frank was to become a writer. So as you're reading her diary, which becomes the only legacy that is really left at the end of the story, she says something that's very important, and she uses the phrase that paper is patient. And I find a lot of kids who are difficult, or having difficulties rather, that this whole idea that if they are struggling with emotions, that to be able to write down how they're feeling is often an easier way for them to give to their emotions, any difficulties that they are experiencing. As a summary of the Diary of Anne Frank, it really is a real account of a young 14-year-old Jewish girl who, in order to try and escape the Nazi occupation in Amsterdam, has to go into hiding with her family. And them, they quarantine, the lockdown lasts for slightly over 2 years. And as a result of this experience, her diary actually becomes her only friend. And she writes from the perspective of a 13-year-old child and about her routine in the secret annex, which is the room or the rooms that her family and her have to hide away in. She gives vent to her hopes, her fears, and her dreams of becoming a writer one day. Obviously, based upon the activities that I encourage my children to do, as we are through this, reading the novel together, is to actually do the writing of their own diary. As a result of the lockdown period, we did sort of encourage the kids in the beginning to start a lockdown diary with different activities, and I'm going to be showing you a number of different examples of the different activities that we used, just to help kids sort of deal with the emotions, the fear that was around, especially at that time. One of the biggest issues that my kids have reported to me was that they were missing the routine of school, etc., etc. What subsequent to that I've also found is some other sort of memory books, etc. So, for example, those children who have to go into self-isolation or quarantine because someone in their family has tested positive, we send them home with a quarantine memory book, just so that they are sort of engaged in a daily activity of recording their experience, and with the intention and the hope that through processing their emotions, this time of pandemic is not going to be as damaging as it possibly could without children being able to vent how they're feeling and how they're dealing with things. I have made these copies available to Deb, so if anybody is wanting copies to use with their own children, they're welcome to. I would guess that they sort of could be used roughly from about grade 3, grade 4 children, and possibly into the early high school as well. In order to also kind of change a bit of perspective because of all the fear around, my children have also been working on a time capsule. Eventually, this is going to go away like every sort of other pandemic throughout history. And I also wanted my kids, because they are living through this experience, to have a chance to actually write and create an actual time capsule of the actual event, of what they have been experiencing, for them to share with their own children and grandchildren, possibly, just as Anne Frank did. These are just some examples of what the children were processing and working through. I'm not going to read everything, and as I say, these are available if you would like to send your email address through. So just some examples of writing down and looking for the positives in a day, just to help the kids, maintain perspective and realize that, for example, everything in life, there is both a negative and a positive, and to try and actually search for the positive things. The children, my children especially, are battling particularly with the fact that they can't do sport, especially my boys. So to try and just give them a bit of perspective and look for what is good in your day. And also to kind of help them learn how to self-regulate. Looking at different boredom aspects, looking at the value of families. I think we're all quite aware that the whole family dynamic has had to change quite a bit. And it's quite concerning, the level of abuse that has increased in families over especially the lockdown period. So just also helping children look at the idea of isolation, their friendships, how their friendships may have changed. Also to kind of encourage children to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, to try and develop empathy amongst them. What I'm finding in particular is with the sort of cell phone generation, that the children tend to sort of be bullying each other online, for an example. And I think it's got a lot to do with that sense of distance. They would possibly and probably, and I would hope not, ever say the things that they feel that they can say to someone that they're having an argument with online, that they would never be able to say that face to face. So we're sort of also trying to give them the skills to deal with, this new technology, and how, as good as what technology is, we also have to learn how to use it responsibly, not to create harm. As I said before, sort of the whole idea of helping children learn how to self-regulate and self-soothe. I'm finding in my class as well, a lot of the children sort of see me as their teacher, but as their entertainer. And they're struggling with being able to sort of entertain themselves, get on with what they need to do. They're always sort of waiting for someone to help them fill the gap. So I was also hoping that through these exercises and activities, the kids would learn a bit more of that self-regulation and really how to entertain themselves. Dealing with big feelings in small bodies and inexperienced minds has been. I found that this activity has been quite successful with them, just to allow the children to have a voice. A lot of them, I think, often with parents being on social media as well, or on their cell phones, the children often don't feel that anybody's listening to them or hearing them. So in my class, I really try and give a space for them to be able to talk about their feelings. And I found that once you create that space, it's actually very hard to get them to stop talking, if you know what I mean. Also utilizing the skills of being able to summarize and give voice to your own experience, and how listening to other children and their experiences also gives a voice to empathy, listening to what others are saying and considering another perspective. That everybody has a right to actually do their experience of things. And even though it may be different to how you are experiencing it, they have the right to sort of say that. My children have also experienced quite a lot of grief during this pandemic. They've lost time at school, they've lost possibly the ability of gaining scholarships, of possibly getting into the high school of their choice. So I've also used the book to sort of really help them deal with grief, and especially not the literal sort of grieving of losing a family member, but more of the non-death loss, which can affect children as much as a death loss. As I said, we've sort of used quite a lot of discussion activities. And one of the questions which brought up a lot of feeling and emotion from the children is, what have they missed the most during the lockdown period? And that gave me a really good sense of what the children are grieving about. I'd like to just read an extract from the diary of Anne Frank that just pertains to this whole idea of paper being patient. Mrs. Quirpace comes and tells us about her daughter Corrie's hockey club, canoe trips, theatrical performances, and friends. I don't think I'm jealous of Corrie, but I couldn't help feeling a great longing to have lots of fun myself for once, and to laugh until my tummy ached, especially at this time of the year with all its holidays for Christmas and New Year, and we are stuck here like outcasts. Still, I really ought not to write this because it seems ungrateful, and I've certainly been exaggerating. But still, whatever you think of me, I can't keep everything to myself. So I'll remind you of my opening words. Paper is patient. Another way of giving voice to children's feelings is using poetry. There's a very effective technique that I like to use, and depending on what I have to teach under figurative language, you can vary how you're asking the children to deal with this. I also teach the PSW in grade 6, excuse me, and we've been recently covering bullying. And I found that by giving the children the basic outline of a poem and just leaving certain aspects out where they could give vent to their own emotions, they were actually able to produce some really poignant poetry about bullying, the effect of bullying, etc., etc. But here's an example that I used from the book. So for example, you can make the poem as long as you need to. Line 1 could be just writing a simile on the topic. I'll show you an example just now from one of my kids when I gave them the topic of lockdown. Line 2, to use 3 adjectives to describe your topic. Line 3, to give your topic a color. And line 4, to give a synonym for your topic. So obviously we're just reinforcing all the different poetic devices, parts of speech, etc. So here's an example of what one of my kids wrote about lockdown. Lockdown, like being in jail, bored, hungry, lost, grey, house arrest with no parole. Activity 4, this book in particular lends itself to a lot of discussion. Right in the beginning of the book, Anne Frank sort of describes the various children in her classes and sort of how she's dealing with school, etc., etc. So throughout the book, there are a variety of different options that you can use as a discussion, in the class. So we looked at, the different personalities in the different classes, etc., etc. There were some hilarious results of this. Here are just some topics I would suggest. Have you ever had to be brave? We look at the bravery that Anne Frank had to show as such a young girl and having to deal with this whole sense of isolation, not being able to see her friend, having to be quiet the whole day. And then another topic which leads to some interesting discussions from the kids. Have you ever lost something that was really important to you? Often after that exercise, I get a really strong sense of what my children are grieving for. And it will often bring up current feelings, but it can also often bring out, dealings from the past and things that haven't actually been resolved. So it allows an opportunity for expression. One of the final activity then is some writing topics. So, for example, because I teach the PSW, it's also to discuss this whole idea of adolescence. Grade 6 is a particularly difficult year because of the children kind of, entering that tween sort of phase. I mean, the teenage years can be difficult enough. But this is an example of some of the writing topics that I would do with my kids. Adolescence is often a difficult time for many young people. They're trying to learn how to use their suddenly large bodies and to find ways of showing their need for greater independence. While this is an exciting time with a new sense of personal power, it's also a little scary at times because there's sometimes a little fear of what will happen next. Think about your own growing up. How are you feeling? How do you respond to others, especially to adults? This age in grade 6 as well can often be the age where parents' little darlings turn into demons which even though it's a natural part of growing up, the parents can often struggle with this sort of rapid and almost overnight change that they're seeing in their own children. What do you want to do with your life? Think of how Anne may have felt about spending 2 years living in a tiny attic, hidden away from all the fun and her friends, and unable to go outside or to make a sound during the day. Obviously, with the lockdown experience that the children have experienced, they have more of a sense of what she actually did experience, despite us often having the luxury of being able to sort of go outside. So the actual written topic would be to write a letter to Anne, explaining how you can empathize with her and suggestions of how you could help her. And with the whole idea of trying to give your best advice as her friend on how she can best deal with the problems she has experienced. Obviously, this kind of writing activity sort of really is about me sort of getting more insight into what my kids are experiencing and how they actually are coping with their experiences during this pandemic. Thank you very much.
And it's just such an inspirational project. And I just feel, we've got so much, all of us have so much to learn from that. And what I love is that you didn't take a book that was a pandemic book, you took something that you could use next year and the year after in different ways. So thank you for sharing that. I remember I was a high school teacher for the last bit of my teaching career. And I remember how working with grade 8s, that same feeling of how they don't know who they are yet. And as a teacher, you can use literature to help them do that. I used to use Crocodile Burning by Michael Williams.
Oh, wonderful.
Excellent book to use in a high school. Excellent. And what you're doing there is just so inspirational. So well done. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to take my video off. Okay. Nana Antonani is an extraordinarily talented teacher who's been making a difference in the lives of learners and teachers, both in the Pietermaritzburg area and beyond, for the last 20 years. After training at Indonesia College, she has studied for her BEd honours at UKZN. She is trained in the Reading to Learn methodology by the founder, Dr. David Rose, from Sydney University, Australia, in 2004. She has been a Learning to Read practitioner and trainer since 2005. A video of her, sorry guys, is being used in a number of universities to help student teachers to analyze lockdown through a JET education project. Nana's heart, she often says only children who feel secure and safe in the classroom who are able to learn. So her classroom is a place of nurturing and listening, helping the learners to develop their confidence as they learn, and this shows in her classes' results. She is currently teaching grade 3 at Panorama Primary School in Pietermaritzburg, a school where the LOLT is English.
Thank you, Jenny. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. As Jenny has introduced me, I'm a foundation phase specialist, currently teaching grade 3. So my part is to talk about how, as a teacher, do I help learners to cope with the situation that we're all in now, the COVID-19 and all those things. During my lesson. So I'm going to talk about how do I bring that in during my reading lesson. As a foundation phase educator, you are going to pardon me. So everything begins from a big book. During the reading lesson, first of all, as a teacher, I have to give my learners a brief background of what is going to be happening in the story, just to assist them to understand, because we know that they are in different levels of understanding. And it is during that stage of preparing before reading that I'm going to bring in and I'm going to create situations where learners have to look at the characters, think about their feelings, and also reflect to their own everyday feelings. So I'm going to give you a brief background of the story so that it will be easy for me to work on with you. So the story is about this boy. The boy had a brown hen as a pet. The name of the hen was Mishina. So the boy used to call Mishina every day, Mishina, Mishina. And the pet, the brown hen, will come running to Mishina. So I will say to the children, when your mommy calls you, when your dad calls you, when you were playing outside, how do you react? They would say they run, and I would say, why do you run? Because they will come up with different answers there to say, because you are coming to a person that loves you, you are curious of what this person is going to say or give to you, and of course, to show respect as well. So, in the story, the hen will come running and Mishina will feed the brown hen. And I will ask the children, what do you do with your hen? And they will talk about all those things. With your pet, they'll talk about all those things. You feed your pet, you play with your pet, and all those things. And I will ask a question. When you're doing that with your pet, how do you feel? And I will allow children to talk about their feelings, that you feel loved because your pet is around, is there, is physically there. And during my preparation stage, I will also go on with the story to say, and now it happened that one day when the boy called Mishina didn't come. He went away. Mishina went away without saying goodbye. That was sad. And I will ask the children, how do you think the boy felt when he called Mishina and Mishina did not respond and Mishina was nowhere to be found? And I will allow the children to talk about their feelings. I'm sure they will say it was sad. The boy felt sad. The boy maybe cried because now the boy thought he has lost someone that he loves. And then in my summary, I'll go on and talk about how the Mishina came one day, and because it says, then Mishina came home. The boy heard the noise in the grass, and he looked. There was the brown hen. And children, how do you think the boy felt when he actually saw Mishina coming? Well, the children will definitely say the boy was happy now, the boy was relieved, the boy was happy that the Mishina, the pet, has came back home. And in the story, it says that Mishina came with 10 little yellow chicks. Okay, after giving that, then I'll move on to shared reading with the children. When doing shared reading now, as a teacher, I first read the story and let them listen, and then I read with them. As we're reading, I point to the pictures. The book has pictures. I allow the children to look at the pictures and look at the faces and look at the faces and ask questions. Children, if you look at this picture at this boy, the face of the boy, how do you think the boy is feeling? If the boy is smiling, the children will talk about that, especially in the first stage of the story where the boy was, when everything was normal, when the boy was feeding Mishina from his hand. I will allow children to talk about that. I will pause and allow children to talk about that how do you feel? And also go to now our stage of COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown. I remember in my classroom, I were doing an essay about COVID-19 as per assessment, the departmental assessment. And I would say during the first stage of lockdown, children, what are the things that made you to feel happy? Are there anything? Was it totally bad, or there are things, or there are times when you felt positive or happy? And the children were giving answers like saying, it was nice to be at home with our parents for the first time, all the time, because our parents are working and we are also at school. Children also spoke about we got to try new things that we never did before. We were learning to bake. We were learning with our parents to cook. And one of the children said, for the first time, we had time to sit until late at night, and my parents were telling us stories of what happened to them. So it was that time where they got to be together, to share things. And the same thing that happened in the story of Mishina and the boy, when he was feeding, when the hen was eating from the hand of the boy. So that's touch, the physical presence of present. So learners were expressing their feelings. How did it feel? Yeah, yes, it was lockdown, it was negative, but in it there was something positive. They got that time to be to spend time with their parents, to be sharing, to eat together, to do things together, to play. One of the children said it was the first time she got to play with his dad. So during the reading lesson, you as a teacher, you get to bring in all those things, especially about COVID-19. And then in the story, it says Mishina went away. And you get to ask children, how do you feel when somebody that you like, that you love, just go away? And during COVID-19, during lockdown, some of our members had to go away for quarantine, for hospitalization, and allow children to talk about that. I did that in my class. My children were talking about their feelings. They said they were scared, they were worried, they were frightened, they had fear. It was cold. You know, it started when everything was normal. It was like at the first stage of lockdown, it was like, yeah, now we get time, at last we get time to be together. But as the COVID-19 stage, the lockdown stage went to when people were dying, when people had to quarantine, it's when all the negative, all the pain, the negative feelings that the children had to talk about. They said they were worried, they were scared, they were frustrated, they had fear. And that's, they were talking about it during that time. One boy in my class shared with us that he lost his father. I was so touched. Unfortunately, I was in the front of the class during the discussion. I had to hold my tears. But that child spoke about it that day. And during that time, the whole class said to him, "We are sorry to hear that." He got a chance to talk about it, and also people around him to sympathize, to say something, just to show that they sympathize with him. And when the boy, okay, in the story, when the boy lost Mishina, the boy did not give up. He kept on looking for Mishina, and he walked around, and unfortunately, he came across this main group of children. When he asked about his hand, these children laughed at him and mocked him. Now, children, how do you think the boy felt when these children did this? The children will tell you. And now, during lockdown and during this time of COVID-19, when you lose someone, what do you expect people to do to show that they feel what you are feeling? And, children will talk about that. So you are trying to bring in now the feeling of sympathizing with someone so that everybody will be able to cope with this strange new thing that everybody can find it hard to deal with. And then the children will talk about that it was wrong of these children to say that you don't do that to people. So they talk about the feelings. How would you feel? Because one of the children spoke about the funeral, that they had a granny's funeral, and they spoke about how did people talk to them, to sympathize, how did people support them, how did the funeral. So it created a situation where children are able to talk about their feelings and to deal with it, and also to get to know that what happened to them, it's not them only. It has happened to other people, and it makes them to feel even better. And yes, so this is how we try to bring in feelings during the reading lesson in the classroom. You read, you show the pictures, you allow learners to look at the pictures. What do you think this character is doing? Is he smiling? How do you think he feels? And then you allow learners to talk about the feelings of the character. And you also allow them to talk about their own feelings when they have experienced the same thing that the character is experiencing. So this is how we have been doing it. This is how we are doing it. And then at the end of this story, Mishina, we find that Mishina comes back home. Now, children, how do you think the boy felt like when he saw Mishina coming back home? And he came back with 10 chicks. How do you think he felt like? Definitely children will say he would be, the boy felt happy, relieved, and welcoming. Now had to welcome Mishina home with the 10 little yellow chicks. Yes, I think that is how I use the story to allow learners to reflect on their own feelings by looking at the feeling of the characters that are in the story. Thank you.
Nana, thank you. That was brilliant. Just so lovely. I have been in Nana's classroom when she's taught this particular story, Machina, and I've been in workshops where she's used it. And it's just such a delightful story. It just gives so much interest to the kids. And it gives so many opportunities to talk about feelings.
Yes.
I just think it's a lovely thing to do. And I think I saw in the comments someone saying we don't have to solve the children's problems by talking through the feelings. Just helping them acknowledge it is one of the key things. So thank you, Anne, for saying that. That was really awesome. That really worked very well. So originally from small town of Secunda in Mpumalanga, Ms. Rihanna Saeed moved to the city of Durban to complete high school at Northland Girls High, and thereafter pursue her teaching career at Dokkies, which is Durban College of Education, way back in 1996. My darling, 1996, very, very recent for me. She's a hands-on foundation specialist with an eye for paying attention to detail, both in and out of the classroom. And Rihanna has been with Alpha Lau College in Durban for 12 years now. Her passion and enthusiasm for working with children and adults is made apparent by her innovative lessons and creativity. Great leadership abilities, strong interpersonal skills, and 20 years of teaching experience, combined with a positive and fun-loving approach towards growing kids, benefits all. With a strong belief that learning doesn't end with each lesson, but continues throughout every day and at every experience of life, Rihanna, or Ray as she says I can call her, is also the face behind the popular Delectables foodie social media handle, where she gets to teach adults and tap into her culinary skills. And she's also the proud aspirant to Inspire Education Instagram and Facebook blog called Creative Classroom Concepts. Now, please remember to keep putting your comments and your classroom and your questions in the chat. Ray, over to you.
Thank you so much, Deb, and thank you to Sakina in her absence for allowing me and presenting me the opportunity to present to all of you today. I have to begin to say that the term unprecedented times has become a hallmark for describing the context in which I begin to tell my story. And my topic for today is going to be all about how I kept literacy alive, the COVID edition, in my grade 1 class, in my grade 1 grade, particularly online, and to parents and to everybody else that was engaged in the education sector of this whole past few months of COVID. And true, food is my passion. It doesn't go with align with my goals of wanting to be thin, but I get to teach people and adults how to cook and how to embrace their culinary skills. My biggest passion, of course, is that I love literacy and I love reading. And when I refer to literacy, I'll refer to it as speaking, writing, listening, and obviously reading. And that's how I refer literacy to in my classroom, online, everywhere else, okay? One of my passions is that I'm very right brain dominant, and I've learned to actually embrace that. And this is where I have a little book club called Just One More Chapter, where I get to meet children on a Saturday morning. Well, I haven't done that obviously in COVID times, but I hope to do so soon. And we meet and we have activities and everything that's theme-based to literacy. So I might take an author like Roald Dahl and then create just a whole setup where we do art, we do English, we do maths, we do everything related to a story or an author. And that's one of my passions. I have to tell you and confess that when COVID came along, and I will share my story as I did over the months to give you an idea of how I introduced literacy and kept it alive. I am an extroverted person. I'm a hugger. I'm a shopaholic. I mean, I wondered, is Gateway missing me as much as I'm missing them in that 28-day lockdown? So when COVID came along, it was a total shock to my system. And I confess to say that there were stages when it first began where I couldn't even catch my breath. I lost sleep. I was anxious. I was everything that I was the textbook case of an extrovert being in this COVID times. I went to the doctor. I said, "Doctor, I can't even swallow. I don't know what's wrong. I think I have indigestion." He said, "It's not stuck in your throat, it's stuck in your head." And I had to deal with all of this and embrace what was coming out in this whole lockdown thing. And a lot of people don't want to admit that. And I'm sure some of you are shaking your heads and you say, "Oh, that's what it was. That's why I wasn't losing my sleep and stuff like that. I was losing sleep and stuff." But nevertheless, I had to put on my big girl pants and say, you know what, this is it. And this is where I'm going to move forward. And I'm going to embrace it in my career-wise. I firmly believe, and my motto is that letters and sounds become words. And then words become sentences. And then sentences lead to ultimately stories and the love of books and literacy. And that's something that I strongly believe in, and I take through it throughout my classroom. So I'm going to start right at the beginning in March. The Thursday when it was announced that we had our first COVID case in South Africa, the first thing that I did was, my first instinct was, let me drop everything and look for the resources that I have. And I rushed out that afternoon to check for some little tissues and for the charts that I have. And you can see Detol had given us those resources that we had kept in our classes. And I rushed out and I used my first book, which was the Dr. Seuss, "Oh, the Things You Can Do That Are Good for You." And this book is all about healthy living. It's about washing your hands. It's about the speed of a sneeze. It is so cute and funny because, as we know, Dr. Seuss has that rhyme and rhythm, and it's fun and colorful. And it was something that I could introduce to the kids very, very cutely to tell them about what was going to come. Because the minute we heard that the first thing to do is wash your hands, that was my go-to place for my lessons in English, as well as taking it over to a little book called Washing My Hands, which it was a tiny mini pocket book which the kids made, simple sentences that they could read or their parents could read to them. The book was very cute. It said, "What the snuffle, gruffle, trouble. There's no time to play because he sneezes at least 90 times every day." Then I went on to say, "We touch our faces 90 times a day." And that was my first instinct. That Sunday, the president spoke and he said that he would like the schools to close by the Wednesday or by the Friday. Circumstances surrounding my school meant that we had a lot of children who had interaction with parents or with family members who were overseas and had just come into the country. And in my community, we decided that the Sunday night when the president spoke, we were told, don't come back to school. It was abrupt, it was closure. There and there, we were told to go into our lockdown. So my lockdown went very, very quickly, way before anybody else's. I also used in that day, that Friday that I used the facts about things. And I found this article in the newspaper, which actually was given to me. Fortunately, I have a good relationship and I use social media as a powerful tool to create those relationships with other parents. There's a parent in the high school doesn't have any children in the foundation phase, but who sent me this article. She sent me the Lifebuoy soap. She sent me every little thing, and she said, I know, Ray, ma'am, you're the person that will do justice to the article. So I use that point of literacy as my first point of literacy. And that's just where it began at the beginning. 28 days of lockdown started. And then we started panicking and I started panicking, what's the first and the most important thing, or the factor that I was going to lose with the kids? What was the one thing that was my major concern? And for me, it was that, will the children be able to read? And that's when everybody else started giving me ideas. There were people online who tweeted me and said, I know you'll use this lesson, and I know that you'll make justice to that lesson because of that relationship that I've built on social media. And they shared ideas with me also. I did have to realize that everyone was applauding everyone else during this lockdown, but they weren't thinking about the kids, who were the real heroes, who had to stay indoors more than ever than they've known in their lives. Their whole little worlds have literally been turned upside down. All these rules they've never known, a life they could have imagined, adults talking about others becoming unwell, news reporting, death after death, especially in my community, was quite strong. And then, of course, our poor babies' minds, they must have been racing. So every day they had to get up and they had to carry on despite all of that. And ultimately, I believe that they were the real heroes. So during the 28 days of lockdown, I had a series of books that I bought from the traveling bookshop at a measly cost of like 30 Rand each. And I did it the old-fashioned way. I took out my phone and I flipped a page and I read the page and I paused, and I flipped the page and I read and I paused, and I created these 5-minute narration stories. It's great to work together. And those are all available on my social media blog, Creative Classroom Concepts. And other parents started telling it to their kids and letting them watch the little video of it, of the narration. It's great to keep calm. It's great to be kind, all related to being in your home. So that was my next point of literacy that I believed in. I also gave out my breakthrough method of learning to read virally. I just sent it out to every parent that I knew as a PDF, and just so that I knew and I had peace of mind that little kids were at least learning to read, and people appreciated that. Moms appreciated it. Some people said, but isn't it copyrighted? And I didn't even care at that moment, because it was just, that was my point of concern. Will the children be able to read? I have to on the onset tell you that I was given a lot of stuff. People gave me the most beautiful online stories, which I incorporated. I won't share all of them with you today, but I will give Deb the link to the Google Drive that I saved it as, and it's a it's the COVID-19 resources drive of mine, and people are most glad to share it and to use it because I received it. I found that there were bloggers online, and there were things like Twinkle in Australia and all over the world who gave us resources for free, because it was like giving Netflix for free or all of these things for free, because we were in lockdown and they wanted to share. And I took full advantage of that, and I saved them all to my Google Drive. Then came the end of what was our first term holiday, and on the 4th of May, and please remember that throughout this lockdown, I was learning how to teach online. So throughout the lockdown, while telling the moral stories with that shaky hand, and all that time, I was creating these narrations and teaching children just to learn to love to read and to take that time. I was also trying to learn how to be this professional online web designer and everything else, and I had tremendous support, I have to say, from our technical team at Al-Falah College, who step by step, they gave us lessons online, and they recorded how to teach online. And I used the exact same platform that we are using now. I used PowerPoint. I'm using PowerPoint now, and this is how I got to introduce lessons into my class. And that's when on the 4th of May, when it would have been the first day of second term, I started teaching online, and my online journey began. And throughout that time, I introduced kids to the reality of things while they sat in their homes, and people again gave me things. There was someone in La Mercy who he sends his sisters the sunrise a video every morning, and she would send it to me. She's a parent, not from grade 1 again, I say, and she sent it to me, and I'd pinch it and I'd add it to my lesson just to brighten up and to give them that resilience that there is a brighter day. I would use things like describing that the places of worship were not there. So daily news was really true current news that was happening. I'd literally take photos of the screen of my TV, email it to myself, add it to my PowerPoints. And then other things that came along during lockdown, things like hotels being closed. I spoke about that. I spoke about us being at home. I used, as you can see, Dr. Seuss a lot, because these sort of poems and stuff came up. They were just floating around. Humor came up, as you can see, when I pointed to this one over here. People were sending me the cutest stuff of how do you do it. There was an appreciation for teachers that I cannot even describe. I used live people and live animals, like my pet cat, and I brought him into it. I put him on the screen. I created a comprehension about cats. Simple, because it was the it sounds that we were doing in that first term, just to create that love for literacy. Put a few sentences on the board, ask them questions about it, added the live prop to it, just to keep literacy alive, as I would say, okay? And I would introduce the weather, months of the year, days of the week, words that they were happy with. I also introduced handwriting on the screen, where I would get kids to do 1 letter a day, and just round and point out and in the air, everything related to the love of literacy. Some of the PDFs that I got, these were some of them. I just snapshot a few. They were the stories that I told. So I had read aloud time. I had read aloud time all the time with the kids. Okay, yeah. That's when I created also a learning environment where I stuck charts up. And remember that all of this I had to do by dressing up every morning to show my face for like 2 minutes, just to say hello to them. Give them that sense of, I miss you and I love you, ma'am, and I'm still there. And then they were happy that they were talking and they were learning from a real life screen. Okay. I also turned myself into a Bitmoji. I used the app of a cell phone. I snapshot them. I emailed them to myself. I added these to my screen. They were little words that the children learned. So they knew air hugs, it matched the picture. Wash your hands. If I created sentences, I included exactly these words so that they were familiar with the words. Then what happened was that we went into a level 3 or a level 2 and we started bringing back children into school, but we had options of lockdown. You could come back to school, or you had an online teacher. And I went straight into being an online teacher, as well as popping into the classroom to take care of the socially distanced class that I had also with other teachers. My worst moment was when I had to, my pride and possession, my library area, I had to close it down. And I wrote little notes from the books. Can't wait to spend time with you again. Love the books. Miss you stacks from the book corner. And I totally, just closed it up. Subsequently, we have opened it up now with strict regulations that we need to sanitize. So the kids are using those books now. But it's very difficult because children, they love to read, and I encourage that. So my carpet area was the one thing we missed the most.
Sorry, Ray, can I just interrupt? We're getting near the end of your time.
Yes.
I'm just giving you a little bit of warning.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to go quicker. Okay. And then it was just little things that related to literacy, little poems that the kids could use and feel better about themselves. I'm going to go very quickly. This was my online class that I used, very print rich, which the kids could see on the screen. I used poetry that was related to COVID, little poems that helped. I started each day with a positive thought, and it was just that I needed to keep them, happy as can be. We had Book Character Day on World Literacy Day, and I did this as an online and then on site. So while the kids on site were doing it, we also did this in the comfort of our homes with tremendous support from the parents. And that was very exciting. We then also had International Dot Day. And you might notice that I'm very into current issues. I believe that if you know what World Days are about, World Book Day, Read Aloud Day, all of that, you can use that to create an extra little bit of lessons, and you can really keep literacy alive on a current issue level in your classroom. World Dot Day is about a book that is, and I'll send you the name, it's called, Dot Day, and it's called The Dot, and it's about this little child who can't write, and she feels that she can't draw, and what happens is that the teacher tells us, so draw a dot, and that dot stems into tapping into her creativity. It's a beautiful book. Okay. I also had reading challenges for learners who could already read, and I gave them the Dolch word list, which was the 220 sight words. And please note that I speak of this as from a grade 1 level, because they were the ones who, when I'm tapping into literacy from a grade 1 level, I went to my local pizza shop. He gave me some little prizes and vouchers. I believe that if you don't ask, you'll never know whether you could get things or not. And I always ask. They can just say no, and that's all. I got the most beautiful feedback. I brought in grammar, pronouns, everything that was the CAPS document. I followed through with it. I thought grammar on the screen, and then I would put up a picture that looked like my board, and I'd say, please, we need to do this. And this was the work that I got. Then for the past 2 weeks, and this is where I round up, I've been back in the classroom, and I've tried to create another print-rich environment and introduce literacy in a fun way by pictures and by little sentences that the children can read and that they can understand. Last I've ended with on Thursday, when it was Global Hand Washing Day, and I've done step-by-step little books again on washing hands. So I started with washing hands. I'm back at washing hands and little mini books for the kids where they pick up the words and they're able to read. Going forward, as I round off, there is going to be a World Kindness Day. I saw that Shaz had mentioned Wonder. It's one of my favorite books at an older level to introduce to children. And then, of course, there's one called Have You Filled a Bucket Today? And it's a daily guide to how children have an invisible bucket and you fill it with kindness every time you give somebody a compliment. And it's an amazing, amazing book to get hold of. Finally, just to round off, I want to say that this pandemic is really lasting like a Nokia 3310. But if I could give a parting shot, I'd say that you have to keep your brain sensational, because that's the way you're not going to get bored, and you're going to have kids really interested and intrigued, and keep the love of literacy for the kids. And again, as I say, literacy in reading, writing, speaking, and listening, as I put it. Okay, finally, keep looking up. We're stronger than you know. We're definitely going to get through all of this. And thank you for sharing and allowing me to share my story with you.
Wow, thank you, Rihanna. That was just amazing. I'm in awe, teaching and online and in the classroom at the same time. Well done. Okay, I'm going to move on quickly because we've only got a little bit of time left. So I'm going straight to Rogani, and she's going to introduce our last speaker.
Thank you, Deb. Dr. Kalavani David is currently head of department in the foundation phase at Burke Street Primary. She has 35 years of teaching experience and also lectures drama to fourth-year students at the Varsity College. She teaches at a very challenging school with large class sizes. She has a cheerful and bubbly personality, and a positive spirit is infectious. Her eagerness to implement new ideas in the literacy field is admirable. The fire of literacy is created by the sparks between a child, a book, and the person reading. This quotation is by Mem Fox. We'd love to listen to her presentation, and I'm sure she's got something exciting for us. Thank you. Over to you, Kale David.
Well, the rubric and the backdrop, I think we've all got the gist of what we are here for this morning. But I'd like to just share this pearl of wisdom by Maya Angelou. And she says, people may forget what you said. They might even forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And dearest colleagues, empowered colleagues, it is true that our learners may certainly forget what we teach them and what we've taught them. But I can assure you, because we genuinely care about each and every one of them and teach, embrace, and shape their world with love, they definitely sense how we make them feel. And this feeling will forever be etched in their mind, their heart, their soul, to become memories which they are sure to cherish throughout their lives. We appreciate that this year, 2020, has been a challenging year, with the coronavirus outbreak causing major disruptions to daily life for both adults and our little children alike. In fact, some of us may still be feeling a little overwhelmed, as alluded to earlier on. Nevertheless, we are trying our best to take stock of our health, to exercise, to eat correctly, to use a variety of appropriate resources to engage our learners, whilst bringing positive energy and optimism into the classroom, and to make every effort to interact in a loving manner with our learners. Nevertheless, despite our earnest attempts, we may have observed that whilst some have welcomed the return to school with excitement and joy, other children are feeling these changes deeply and are experiencing feelings of fear and anxiety, all of which are to be expected. Does this adorable angel perhaps remind you of someone in your class or even in your home? It is evident that worry and anxiety is the most frequent of all mental disorders in children. It is suggested by Hart that high levels of stress and emotions related to social situations, sensory issues, or general frustration are common in children who live with anxiety. And some of the changes in the new normal post-COVID include the splitting of learners into different groups to fulfill the requirements of social distancing, both within and outside the classroom. In fact, I can't say post-COVID, we're still in this COVID. As learners return to the new normal, their long absence and separation from their classmates may have left some feeling isolated with a loss of control. Some may be demonstrating aggressive behavior, such as screaming, throwing things, or hurting others, whilst others may be demonstrating grief, anger, helplessness, sadness, or even experiencing physical changes, such as difficulty sleeping, complaining of a tummy ache whilst in the classroom, having a headache, or having a loss of appetite. And as a teacher of young children, you may have noticed a learner either becoming withdrawn, seeking attention through poor disruptive behavior, being unable to focus or concentrate, or just struggling to keep friends. As learners return to the new normal, it's sad to note, I've completed with that, thank you. It's sad to note that anxiety disorders in children are often misdiagnosed, overlooked, and downplayed, mostly because children experience difficulty expressing emotions and relaying their concerns and feelings. So we are here to offer coping strategies and some tools that may be used in the classroom. Whilst we acknowledge that everyone feels fear, worry, and apprehension from time to time, it's when these feelings prevent a person from doing what he or she wants to do that anxiety becomes a disability which needs to be addressed. It must be appreciated once again that tools are there to help them deal with anxiety in order to ensure their healthy emotional growth. And this is espoused by Fletcher 2018. Why do we suggest that storytelling is an effective strategy? As much as we as adults understand that facing our fears head on and not avoiding them is the answer to conquering one's fears, it is not so easy a strategy for our children to employ. It is thus suggested that through the medium of storytelling, our learners may have the platform to acquire coping mechanisms, thereby encouraging them to understand, manage, and to overcome their anxiety. Thank you. It's posited by Briggs that stories offer learners vocabulary that may help them identify and to articulate their feelings whilst using appropriate connecting words with their corresponding emotions. There are numerous books on the market that encourages learners to explore their negative emotions, to work out their worries, and to cope with anxious or fearful feelings. And all of these stories, when read aloud during shared reading sessions and discussed as a class unit, have the potential to help our children realize that everyone feels worried at some time, but it needn't be something that they have to face alone or keep bottled up inside so that it festers. Thank you. May we have the next slide, please? The value of bibliotherapy. We often look for solutions to our own personal life situation and feel more at ease when we learn that we are not the only ones dealing with a particular life crisis. It is argued that bibliotherapy or therapeutic reading likewise helps children relate to characters' emotions which they might similarly be feeling. Catharsis connects the reader and the characters in the story. It is a natural response for readers to analyze, empathize, and internalize the story's attributes. Bibliotherapy or storytelling, which we've been doing for all these years, thus defines the importance of reading during times of crisis, not only during COVID-19. Storytelling is integral to the teaching and learning process. I agree with Smith that this helps learners build their self-confidence and brings about change for the better. Expression through text offers readers of all ages the opportunity to find solutions through the characters and conflicts within a story, and to likewise resolve the worry and anxiety that is bubbling within themselves. It holds the promise of helping our children to heal and to acquire the coping skills needed to successfully handle distress, frustration, and anger that are a part of their daily life, and to emerge with a sense of self-control, hope, and resilience. It gives learners language to use when talking about what is worrying them and helps them to figure out what a worry is. It tells children, a worry is a thought that stops you from having fun, from feeling good, from being happy. In fact, you can feel tired from a worry, and you can become sick or sad to decide if it's worth worrying or being anxious about, as espoused by Smith 2013. The next slide, please. Wilma Jean, The Worry Machine, and this book has been written by Julia Cook in 2012, aimed at ages 5 to 10 years. And I've selected Wilma Jean, The Worry Machine, which, like many other stories, portray lessons to be learned and coping mechanisms to be acquired in an interesting and delightful way. Thank you. So it addresses anxiety in a fun way. In concurring with other reviewers, I attest that this rather hilarious book addresses the problem of anxiety in a way that children of all ages may be able to relate to. It offers creative strategies for both parents and teachers to use that can ease the severity of anxiety. And the goal of this book is to give learners the tools needed to feel more in control of their worries. For those anxieties that are not in everyone's control, for example, a worry hat or the weather, then a worry hat is introduced. And it is an enjoyable read for Wilmas of all ages. I can promise you that. And this book includes a note with tips. It is claimed by Hart that prolonged anxiety can seriously impact success in academic achievement and cause children to avoid social and extracurricular activities. In retrospect, this engaging and easy to read book with simple vocabulary is ideal. Additionally, this charmingly illustrated book is filled with opportunities for children to participate in, thereby helping them develop their own self-calming strategies to the extent that they will find themselves, and you yourself as the teacher will find yourself relaxed and ready to focus on work or play. Tips. The character development in this picture book is simple yet important because it allows readers to relate with, engage, and connect with Wilma Jean. The humorous tone and the catchy rhyming style of this book allows young readers to remain engaged. Furthermore, it helps remove the stigma one may have towards anxiety by highlighting some of the ridiculous things that have the potential to make one feel anxious without classifying these as being overly emotional. This book is to be respected for how it invests the reader and helps them make connections and plans in their own lives for those times when things may not always go their way, like, for example, this presentation. And even more tips, from a dread of spiders to panic attacks, kids have worries and fears, just like adults. And Wilma Jean, The Worry Machine, is a book children can turn to when they need advice, when they need reassurance and ideas. The theme of this book is that one shouldn't allow fear and worry to control one's life, as there are always ways to overcome victoriously. It shows a child that he or she is not alone and how to problem solve. The coping strategies and the things that we may use in the classroom, create a worry box. It's an excellent resource which I am using presently in my classroom. Arising from the story are some coping strategies. Learners may be encouraged to complete creative writing stories where they write down their name on the top of a page and then write a story about anything that is happening in their lives and how they are feeling. They may then fold this up and place it in the worry box at the end of each week. They have the option of discussing their story with you thereafter, and this can be done on a one-to-one basis. And it helps to declutter their little mind and to help you identify what is going on so that you can offer the necessary assistance, counseling, or the intervention where required and if required. Create a relaxing space. Nodi and Mayer 29 always advised that foundation phase teachers especially set up a relaxing space in the classroom where learners may be encouraged to go to when they feel the need to. This is where your child chooses certain items that makes them feel happy or calm. Please, teachers, just a note, ensure that you sanitize after each child has used this corner. And your child is encouraged to use the 5 senses, the smell, by having a lavender or vanilla soap, a touch, a soft teddy bear, a cushion, Play-Doh, stress ball, or the sight, having funny pictures that they may laugh at, sound, relaxing music or learners' favorite music, and taste. Have a little treat for them, probably a sweet. The calming down jars, I've done this with my learners as well, which they thoroughly enjoyed making. And now that each one has their own jar, they keep it in their bag to help them calm them down. So another fun activity is to make these calm down jars. All you need to do is throw some warm water, some glitter glue in a glass, probably a plastic jar is even better, and have your learners shake it up and down. And I tell them that as the glitter goes to the bottom of the jar, so do their worries and anxieties. So encourage them to do some deep breathing as they watch the glitter float to the bottom, and incorporate some mindfulness. And it is incredibly soothing and relaxing to watch. Making seed bombs. Colleagues, we've done this past Thursday, and we thoroughly enjoyed doing this. The kneading of the clay dough when making these seed bombs, helps one to de-stress and get rid of anxiety and negative energy. And I have enclosed some photographs, which unfortunately you cannot see right now, but I'm sure this could be put up at a later stage. So to make these seed bombs, all you need is 3 handfuls of air dry clay, which you may get at Bargain Basket, 5 handfuls of soil, some water, and some seeds. And you mix them all together to make little balls, and you throw these in the garden, scatter them, and we are really eagerly awaiting to see these beautiful flowers blossom, just like our learners blossoming. and a short excerpt from Wilma Jean, The Worry Machine. And she says, "From now on, when I worry, I'll know just what to do to keep from getting the bad worry flu. And hopefully, I won't have to make the pickle face as much." In conclusion, just some food for thought. Pondering on the mammoth yet exhilarating responsibility which we, as teachers, especially in the foundation phase, are tasked with, I invite you to reflect on this rather profound and apt inspiration by Michelangelo. "I saw the angel in the marble, and I carved until I set it free." As molders and shapers of little minds, we teachers are blessed with the joy of setting those angels whom may be feeling a little anxious and insecure free. Isn't that just awesome? May we be reminded that it's not what we say, but how we say it. So may we always remember to use the correct tone, and it's our words which have the power to heal, and most importantly, our body language. And I bless you all, precious teachers. I've learned a lot this morning in the way that you teach, the knowledge that you share, and the love that you shower. And I pray that this foundation moves from strength to strength. Thank you for the excellent job which you are doing. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kale. That was astounding. And I'm sorry that stuff didn't work. But, oh, that was just brilliant. Thank you. You're really fantastic. The thought that we are all Michelangelo, setting children free, that's just mind-blowing. So I'm passing over to Rogani now, who's going to end off. Just before she does, I have put on the chat how you can get hold of these resources. Send me an email or put your email on the chat. And then I will also be putting this up by the end of October. It will go up on our YouTube, on the Litasi YouTube channel. So Rogani, over to you.
I have been tasked to give the vote of thanks, and we're always running over time because we've got such excellent presentations. And I really thoroughly learned a lot today, and I'm sure you did as well. Thank you, teachers, for sacrificing your Saturday despite your busy schedule. Teachers are these reservoirs from which, through the process of education, students draw the water of life. Sai Baba. Teachers are pathfinders of the nation who take their communities to victory. Literature stories can be used to prepare the royal road to a bright future. Thank you to the Litasa team for organizing this webinar. A special thanks goes to Deb Avery for courage, wisdom, and unwavering commitment for multitasking so that we could all enjoy this wonderful webinar today. I think it was a very inspiring talk, and I think the foundation phase teachers really set the tone in our country. And I'd like to end off with George Washington's quote: "Education is the key to unlock the golden door of freedom." And in Africa, we have many children that are not even going to have a formal schooling. We have 72 million children in the world that don't get a formal schooling. And a large number is in Africa. And although we are finding curriculum changes and challenges, we need to look at the emotions, which is very important. It has come out in this webinar that we need to stock books in our classroom of how to train children to deal with their emotions. And if we do that, we'll be able to have an effect on their cognitive development. Thank you very much to all the presenters, and do have a lovely weekend. Thank you.